Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Trollheim with your host, Rabbi Anibal, right here. You can read my name. So, welcome to the class, everyone. Welcome, Lori. Welcome, David. Welcome, Shelley. Welcome, Brenda, Jerome, and whoever else is there. Please say hello so we all know that you are there and joining us for the class. So, thank you so much for tuning in this new edition of Trollheim that we are going to study Parsha Chayei Sarah. Very excited about this Parsha because God's willing is going to be my son Ronen's bar mitzvah next year. So he's already preparing the Haftorah for this one. So yeah, maybe he should be the one joining the class today, but he's at school. He's at school. Welcome, Randy. Welcome to the class. Yeah, I have my double espresso today. You can kind of see it. All the crema is really nice. I put a little bit of cream just to cut it, just a dash of cream. So I hope you all enjoyed Cantor Leslie's installation weekend. I was kind of like you guys watching online because I wasn't in town. I had to officiate a wedding in the States. Remember, I was talking to you last week. So, but I enjoyed it very much. So I hope you enjoyed it too. And both services, Kabbalat Shabbat and the Shabbat morning, are still there. Lori, you are drinking Hershey chocolate milk. Delicious. What can I say? That's a delicious thing also. I like Hershey's chocolates. Yeah. But my son is like he goes crazy for hot chocolate. He was crazy. It was a time that I think it was last winter that he was trying different recipes of hot chocolate after going to play in the snow. So that was the fun. We would go with the toboggan and we're playing in the hills with the snow and then coming back home really cold and enjoying some hot chocolate. Yes, David, the word is Sarasota and it was as cold as Winnipeg. Yeah, at least the last day it was very cold there, at least for Sarasotans, right? They are not used to the cold. I have my little jacket and I was fine, but other people were not. You get used to the weather where you live. That's the reality, right? Here in Winnipeg, we are all used to the cold, so nobody gets caught off guard. But at least I guess if you live in a place like Sarasota, right? It's yeah. Ski cap. What is a ski cap? Toboggan. A ski cap. I don't know what a ski cap is. It's here in Winnipeg. The toboggan is the thing that it's like I don't know how you call it. It's you sit on it and you go down the hill. It's the sled. Yeah, something like that. But it's yeah, I like that. I like those things. Too cold day, 35 degrees low. Yeah, sometimes it's cold. In Florida, they were iguanas were falling from the trees. That's what people were saying, and say don't touch them, because people, some people thought iguanas were dead, but they were not dead. They were just stunned by the cold. Then you had to leave them there, and then when it warms up, they wake up and go their ways. Yeah, but it was pretty cool. Very nice wedding, very nice people. So I really enjoyed it. Too bad that I had to miss the installation of our cantor, which, yeah. Wow. Okay, I think it's time for us to begin with the class. Parsha Chayei Sarah. And this is all about the life of Sarah. Sarah, the wife of Abraham. And again, it's interesting. I mention this every year, right? That the parsha is called Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. And a parsha that is called Life contains the death of both Sarah and Abraham. There is a connection there. That's not necessarily the main topic of the class today. I may talk about that on Saturday. Let's see, because it's my turn to present a sermon this Shabbat. So but I wanted to mention that it's interesting that kind of hidden messages that the rabbis left for us to inspire us. So to call the parsha Chayei, Sarah, the life of Sarah, and the parsha contains the death of Sarah and Abraham. So what happened here is the parsha begins with that, with the death of Sarah. And Abraham was very sad to the point that the parsha said that he cried. If we have time later on in the class, we'll talk about the kind of cry of Abraham. Okay, because he said, Liv kota, to cry. And what is also interesting, maybe that's for another year, right? That the previous parsha is talking about the laugh of Sarah. Remember when the angels told Sarah that she was going to be a mom, she's going to have a son, and that was going to be Isaac. But she laughed. She laughed. That is like the very important part of the parsha. And this parsha, it starts with Abraham crying. So lots of emotions represented in the Torah. Sometimes we don't stop to analyze the emotions of the people. And laugh and tears and the different reasons actually for laughing or for crying, because it's interesting because both laughs and tears could represent different things. People can laugh out of happiness, or people can laugh out of mocking somebody else, right? When you mock somebody else. The same with the cry. Tears could be tears of joy, or tears could be tears of pain, which this is the case here in this parsha. Okay, David, you said you saw iguanas before. Not scary. They're okay. They're okay. I like iguanas. Welcome, Amparo. Welcome, Ariel Lee. She came just in time for the class. Yeah. And Shelly, you said one of the first time that we get to see or hear the human side of us. No, there are a lot of things. A lot of things about the human side of our ancestors in the Torah. The thing is, sometimes we don't stop to analyze them. Like for example, the cry of Esau when he realized that Jacob stole the blessing. Woof. I can feel the pain of that man, the way described in the Torah, right? Think about Joseph when he revealed himself to his brothers and removed the makeup and everything. And it says that also that he cried, right? And you could, and that is a cry that you can argue, you can debate is our cry of joy, of pain, or what is it, or something in between maybe. So many emotions of being in front of his brothers after so many years. So the Torah has a lot of that, and it's interesting to analyze the emotions of the people involved there. But now, what I want to say is Sarah died, Abraham cried, but he realized that, it's okay to cry, it's a season, but he has things to do. So he pretty much dries his tears and goes to buy a plot for Sarah. He needed a place to bury her. And that's what we are going to see at the beginning of the class, okay? So, yeah. Okay. So, Abraham goes to talk to this guy who's called Ephron. Ephron, he was a Hittite, one of the nations living there. And for some reason, Abraham wanted to buy a plot or a piece of land from him. The most accepted explanation of why is because that place that we got to know as Ma'arat Machpelah, as the Hebrew name of the land, supposedly was the place where supposedly Adam and Eve were buried. So it was a very sacred place. How do we know that? Or let's put it the other way around. How would Abraham know that? That was according that was the burial place of Adam and Eve. And remember, I mentioned this last class that Abraham supposedly studied or met at least Noah and Noah's son Shem, that they're coming from all the time, all the old days when people used to live over 1,000 years. So this was information that it was taught to Abraham by them. And they were the ones, they were the keepers of the ancient knowledge of the world and the ancient knowledge of God. Because they're coming from the times before the flood. And so they were the ones teaching Abraham about all these secrets and about these secret places and where Adam and Eve were buried. So Abraham thought that it was a sacred place and he wanted to be in control of that. And he decided that that was going to be the place for the place to bury his wife, and the hope was that that was going to become a family plot, because we'll see that Abraham will be buried there, Isaac will be buried there, and then even though Jacob died, is gonna die in Egypt, he's going to be brought to the same place for burial. And eventually, when the Israelites left Egypt after slavery with Moses, right, they took the bones of Joseph to also bury them there. There is an old also rabbinic tradition that's saying when Moses sent the 12 spies, you know the story, the 12 spies before entering into the promised land, there is this midrash that Caleb ben Yefuneh, remember, out of the 12 spies, 10 said that it's impossible, only 2 said, yes, let's go for it, and those were Joshua and Caleb. So Caleb is, according to the rabbis, when he went with the spies, he said to the spies, guys, forgive me, I'm going to take a little detour here. And what was that? He supposedly went, found, and prayed at this burial place of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. It's a very interesting midrash that we have there. So let's read about the purchase, because Abraham needed to buy this piece of land, which is interesting because God promised Abraham the land as a divine inheritance, but nevertheless he went and paid for this place. Okay, so he went to talk to Ephron, the owner of the land at the time, and the verse says like as following: Abraham got the point of what Ephron had said, so he waited out for Ephron the amount of money he had specified in the presence of the son of Het, 400 silver shekels of the weight accepted among merchants. So, if you know anything about this parsha, there was a short negotiation between Ephron and Abraham. Actually, it was all the opposite of what you will expect from a negotiation. Because usually when you negotiate, you try to reduce the price. In this case, was all the opposite, because Abraham went to talk to Ephron and said, okay, how much for the land? I know it's yours, just tell me a price. And Ephron said to Abraham, you know, you are a big macher here in this land. You're a very important person. So you know what? I want to give it to you for free. That's it. Open and shut, right? The negotiation, free. But Abraham said, no, I don't want it for free. In fact, I don't even want to negotiate with you. Just tell me the real value of this property. It will be no negotiation. I will pay that to you. And Ephron said to Abraham, okay, you know what, Abraham? You're right. Between you and me, 400 shekels. What's that? It's should be it should be okay for you, right? And Abraham said, I told you, no negotiation. If you said that is 400 shekels, that's what I'm about to pay to you. Now, there is a debate among rabbis if this 400 silver shekels was a lot of money, a fair amount of money, or not so much money. And there are actually texts proving all of the above. Some people said that there was a lot of money. Some people said there was the fair value of the land. And some of the people saying that it wasn't really that much of a deal. But surprisingly, most people will agree that these 400 shekels of gold that Ephron requested from Abraham were a lot of money, a lot of money. So that Ephron saw an opportunity here to get money from Abraham, because almost Ephron said, what's the point? This guy wants to get a piece of land that is just a rock there, and he's going to pay whatever I ask him. Okay, give me 400 shekel. And Abraham paid for it. He got a document, he got a deed, a title, saying that he owned that piece of land. And it's interesting because technically this becomes the first real estate title that a person owned in the land of Israel. It's the first one. Abraham actually owned a piece of the land of Israel. He knew that God promised that was going to be part of the Jewish people, an inheritance of the Jewish people, but then meanwhile Abraham actually paid full price for it, and he got the piece of paper proving that he was the owner. Okay, so now you see, this is some of the calculations that the rabbi talk about the shekels. I said, Book of Leviticus will say that if a man consecrates some of the field of his inherited property to the Lord, the valuation should be according to its sowing. An area which required a homer of barley seeds at 50 silver shekel. That is another part of the Torah that is mentioning the value in silver shekels. And so what it says here is an area which recorded a homer of barley seeds at 50 silvers of shekel. That was the value by the time of the book of Leviticus. So, according to Rabbi Yitzhak ben Yehuda Halevi of France, listen what he said. As per Leviticus 27:16, a field of the size of a Beit Kur, that is the the measurements of the time, Beit Kur, which is the equivalent of 75,000 square cubits, represents a value of 50 silver shekels. Thus, the size of a field which Abraham purchased for 400 silver shekel was 8 kur, or 600,000 square cubits. Square cubit is approximately 20 inches by 20 inches, and that's the space occupied by a single person. Okay, so cubit, and they didn't have other ways to measure back in the day. They didn't have this standardized way, so they calculated by the size of a hand, for example, or by the size of the length from the hands to the elbow, or approximately the size that a human body will occupy. So those were the ways they have back then. So again, square cubit, approximately 20 inches by 20 inches, space occupied by a single person. This means that Abraham purchased a plot of land that provided an individual space for each of the 600 souls of Israel. So this is talking about, the people who exited Egypt to come to the land of Israel. And so this became a symbol. It's a beautiful symbol that by Abraham accepting to pay 400 silver shekel, when you connect that verse from Genesis with the verse in Leviticus, then you have the the number 600,000 for square cubits. So in other words, he symbolically already bought a space for every Jewish people coming in the future. So this is a beautiful midrash connecting the land of Israel with all of us, in the sense that the land of Israel is not something just for people in the past. It's not something for the people who entered to the land with Joshua or the people who lived there at the time of David or Solomon. It's something that is for all of us. Abraham was already thinking in the future, and he symbolically already bought space for each one of us to live in the land of Israel. Yeah. So Laurie said, counting of the Omer is your favorite. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's one of my favorite too. I used to have a chart, a printed chart where I would mark every day that I would count. Now I do it on my phone, but it's a beautiful thing where you can meditate every day on something different. And Shelley, you said, were shekels only in silver or also in gold? Well, back in the day, the shekels were in silver, the silver coins that they were using at the time. And that once in a while you will see archaeologists that they will find some of these silver shekels from different times. And they will know where they're coming from, but because they have different icons on the coins, so they will be able to date where those are coming from. But it's and Shelley said the first cemetery committee. Yes, the first one, absolutely. He bought the first plot, so he had the first Jewish cemetery. And Ariel Lee said, counting the element is a very meaningful practice for me. Yeah, it is very meaningful. I wish more people will do that. It's, you know, Passover is important, Shavuot is important, but the counting of the Omer is the journey from Passover to Shavuot. And we all know in life or when we travel, usually the journey is more important than the destination. So, yeah, that's the thing. So let's continue with this. Now, listen, with the Lubavitcher Rebbe is talking about also the number 600,000. This is amazing how these things connect to each other, how we can connect the dots, and the number is represented in Jewish history in so many different layers. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, our sages tell us that the Torah contains 600,000 letters. Listen to this, counting the spaces between the letters as well, of course. For each Jew possesses something of the Torah. The same is true of the land of Israel. Israel is the eternal inheritance of the Jewish people, equally the property of every individual Jew. And so, it has been from the very first moment of Jewish ownership of the Holy Land. The first plot of land obtained by the first Jew included a share for every Jewish soul. So in other words, when we are reading here, is when we read this parsha, we are not reading just about a burial plot for Sarah. We are talking about a purchase that it will have an impact on every future generation. And it is a spiritual impact, but it's also a reminder for all of us on how we all have already this connection with the land of Israel that is coming all the way from the times of Abraham. It's beautiful. Shelley, you said, I've been using the Omer app for many years. It's great. I highly recommend. Yeah, because it tells you, as soon as you count, it will give you a little meditation to read. So, and there are many of that. Many of that. I can't even remember which one. I think it's called My Omer, the one that I use. But it notifies you every night the right time to count. It's GPS based, so it depends where you live. It will tell you a different time that it's time to count. I think it's beautiful. Okay, let's continue with this. Now, let's go to another verse of this beautiful parsha. Okay, remember what happened. Abraham buried Sarah after he bought the plot. Um, and now he realized, well, it's just me and Isaac. But then he said, well, Isaac is getting older and he is single. So it's time for Isaac to find a wife. It's fair thing, right? He said, yeah, I mean, it's Ariel Lee. I do classes of the Omer every year. So let's see how I plan this next one after Pesach. Yeah. So what happened is Abraham wanted Isaac to get married, but contrary of where we are going to see with Jacob, because Jacob went abroad to find a wife. Abraham didn't want Isaac to go anywhere else. Abraham wanted Isaac to stay with him. I don't want to dig too deep into the psychology of this strange request, but there are many things related to the life of Isaac that will make his staying in the land of Canaan something very important, because at the end of the day, he became the only patriarch that didn't leave the land of Israel during his life. So I guess this was very important to preserve that status, the status of saying this is going to be the only patriarch that never left the place. So Randy, you said, I thought Abraham buried Sarah in a cave. Yes, yeah, it was the cave of Machpelah. That's what it's called. It's in Hebron. It's in Hebron, so it's very difficult in this day to go and visit. But yeah, it's still there. People go and pray. We supposedly know where the cave is. Yeah. It's Sarah was buried there, and Abraham will be buried there too, and Isaac, and Rebecca, and then for Jacob, Rachel died during the journey, so she's the matriarch that is not buried in the cave. But that's why supposedly Rachel is the one that is protecting the Jewish people in exile, because she's the one not buried in the cave. Yeah. So Abraham, remember, let's back up. Abraham didn't want Isaac to go somewhere else to find a wife, so Abraham will send his servant. Later on, we learn that his name was Eliezer. He will send Eliezer to a different land, the land of Abraham's family. Remember, Abraham used to live there until God said to Abraham, Lech lecha, leave that place and go to the land that I will show you. But it looks like Abraham somehow stayed in touch with those people, because otherwise I don't understand why he will send his servant to that place. So Isaac will get a wife from there. And why was that so important? Because Abraham was probably thinking, well, I met Sarah in that land, and Sarah ended up being a wonderful woman. So maybe Isaac will find another wonderful woman as well, because it's going to be a woman for that place. Okay, meaning that Abraham didn't trust the women on Canaan. He didn't approve of their practices, even though the Torah doesn't give you any examples, but we know that that's the case. And then we'll see that Isaac also, he didn't like the practices of the women at that place, to the point that Esau, eventually he went and married a woman from a different place to make his father happy, because something was off about the people living in Canaan, even though the Torah at this point doesn't tell us what that is. Okay, so Abraham sent Eliezer. He went all the way to the house, he went to Abraham's birthplace, and when he arrived there, he was welcomed by a group of women, especially one of this group of women that ended up being Rebecca, that fed him, so gave water to him and to the camels. Okay, so and this was very interesting because Eliezer prays to God and said, "How am I going to know which woman is going to be the right one?" And then Eliezer said in this prayer to God, "Say, okay, let's have a little test here. Okay, if when I go there, and this is a conversation Eliezer had with God, if when I go there, there will be a woman who will offer water for me and the camels, that will be a pretty good signal that that's the right one." And the Torah says that as soon as he finished saying that, Rebecca showed up. And she is the one who gave water to the camels and to him. And Eliezer pretty much, thank you, God. Thank you for listening to my prayer. And now it's time to go and talk to Rebecca's father, which ended up being a guy called Laban, who was related to Abraham, okay, called Laban. And it's time to negotiate. You know, back in the day, and some traditional families, they still do it this way. It has to be negotiated how much money is Laban is going to receive to allow Rebecca to go with Eliezer to marry Isaac. So this is the story of what happened as soon as Eliezer started the conversation with Laban. Lori said, "Watch from Saudi Arabia or Iraq?" Not sure what the land was. That's a good question. I'm not an expert on geography of the Bible, to be honest. And I believe if you open I don't have it here, the Humash that we have in the sanctuary, there is a map there. You can see which country it is with all these places mentioned in the Torah, so you can pinpoint exactly what part of the geography we are talking about here. Yeah. So now Eliezer is in front of Laban. So Eliezer, listen to this. I will read what is in front of you. So the man came into the house, the man is Eliezer, and Laban girded the camels and gave him straw and provender for the camels and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat. But he said, Eliezer again, he said to Laban, "I will not eat until I have told my errand." And Laban said to him, "Okay, speak on." So Eliezer said, "I am Abraham's servant." Well, this is actually quite interesting in the sense that how devoted Eliezer got to Abraham, that he wouldn't even entertain the idea of eating before finishing the business. Okay, it's something that we all know that business first. First you have to do whatever. First come your responsibilities, and then you can have fun. Have you ever heard that? I used to hear from my parents all the time. First you do your homework, then you can go have fun with your friends, right? And in life happens this thing many times. First you do what you're supposed to do, then you can relax. Not the other way around, because if you start by relaxing or having too much fun, then you may forget your responsibilities. So it's nice to see here how Eliezer had the priorities right, and his devotion to Abraham was so solid that he said, "I won't even eat until I present my point to you, because I didn't come here to eat with you. I came here to find a wife for Isaac." Okay, so let's listen to this. The Midrash Gadol, yes, Shelley, some things never change. Yeah, so the Midrash Gadol will say also here something, and it will take it to the next level. We said, first he fed the animals, and afterwards he was served food. For it is forbidden for a person to taste anything until he feeds his animal. But there is this other thing. That is not only, Eliezer said, "I will personally wait until I present my business to you." But that's not a good enough reason for the animals to starve. So feed the animals, then I will present what I have to present, and then I can eat. So this is an amazing thing, because sometimes we feel, we have to eat, but we also have work responsibilities, another thing. But even with that, Eliezer had in mind and had it very clear that the animals were a priority. And these are things that they are pretty much rooted, are embedded in Judaism, all these laws from the rabbis regarding the way we treat animals. And this is something that sometimes it creates uh, some confusion as to what extent Judaism is requesting from us to develop a specific responsibility towards animals. And there are many examples in the Torah and, of course, in the writings of the rabbis about our relationship with the animals and how we should take care of them. So yeah, we also learn from the story of Eliezer not only that your private responsibility comes before food, but also the feeding of the animals comes before you can eat. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So let's analyze a little bit about what Judaism says about our responsibility towards animals. So because the Talmud will say, this is in Masechet Shabbat, Rabbi Judah said in Rab's name, if an animal falls into a dike, one brings pillows and bedding and places them under it. And if it ascends, it ascends. An objection is raised. If an animal falls into a dike, provisions are made for it where it lies so that it will not perish. Thus, only provisions but not pillows and bedding? There is no difficulty. Here it means where provisions are possible. There where provisions are impossible. If provisions are possible, well and good. If not, one brings pillows and beddings and places them under it. But he robs a utensil of its readiness for use. The avoidance of suffering of animals is a biblical law. So the biblical law comes and supersedes the interdict of the rabbis. So we learned a couple of things here. Number one is that every time you have a conflict between a biblical law and rabbinic law, biblical law comes first. And also the Talmud is recognizing here that the avoidance of suffering of animals is a biblical law. It's not a rabbinic innovation. It's a biblical law, and the rabbis find in the Torah examples of how the avoidance of suffering of animals is coming from the Torah. And this is very important for all of us to understand, because especially in this day and age when more and more people have animals at home, this wasn't always the case. Sometimes animals were more kind of things that people will have around them, or they were using for work, part of their farmer's life, not necessarily as pets. But nevertheless, even if it were just something that you use for work, there were lots of rules and regulations on how to treat the animals. One, we already learned it from the book of Genesis, from the story of Eliezer going to find a wife for Isaac. The number one, you always feed the animal before you feed yourself. Okay? And number two, here the Talmud is bringing this case also, that if an animal comes into a dike, you have to make the animal comfortable, even if you have to take some things that are yours, to put it there to preserve the life and to feed the animal so it won't die. And then you do the possible. You have to do whatever you can for the animal to get out. If it ascends, it ascends. If it can get out, great. If it cannot get out, okay. But at least you do what you can to try to make the animal comfortable and to rescue it. So you have to do whatever is in your power to do that. Absolutely. So Chayei you say preservation of life, human and animal. Absolutely. And of course, at the end of the day, if the situation ever comes, human lives comes first over animal life. But if you are not in that situation, which is most of the time, then animal life should be preserved. It's very important, and it's a mitzvah coming from the Torah. That's what I wanted to see. So, I wanted to bring something I know you guys you like every time I bring something from Rabbi Sachs. So he says the following: Judaism regards animals as sentient beings. They may not think or speak, but they do feel. They are capable of distress. There is such a thing of cruelty to animals, and as far as possible, it should be avoided. Thus, for example, we read in Deuteronomy 25:4, "Do not muzzle an ox when it is treading grain." What is striking about this law is that it parallels provisions for human beings as well. And it says, "When you come to work in your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you desire to satisfy your hunger. However, you may not put any into a receptacle that you may have. When you come to work in your neighbor's standing grain, you may take the ears with your hand. However, you may not lift the sickle for your own benefit in your neighbor's grain." The principle is the same in both cases. It is cruel to prevent those working with food from eating some of it. Okay? So, in other words, if you have somebody working in your field, if they are hungry, they can get the fruit or something and eat it there. Okay? Otherwise, if you avoid them from eating during work, it's cruel, and you have to provide the food for them. That's what it says. It's not your obligation to fill their basket so they will feed the whole family, but everything that they need to eat during their work day, you have to provide for that. Otherwise, it's cruel towards another human being. So, back to the words of Rabbi Sachs, he said the principle is the same in both cases. It is cruel to prevent those working with food from eating some of it. To be sure, in the case of humans, there is a delicate balance of reciprocal responsibility. The employer must allow his employee to eat, but the employee must not engage in petty theft. But the parallel is instructive. Animals, too, have feelings, and they must be respected. Okay? So, it's it's very interesting. So we have to be careful the way we treat the animals in the same way that we are careful the way we treat people. Lori, you said hospitality. Yitzhak was the equivalent of a sheikh. Okay, he will benefit from a wise, charitable Hamish wife. Yeah, and he got it. He got it. He got a good wife, though at the end. It's a little controversial because Isaac's wife, Rebecca, was the one who convinced Jacob to disguise as his brother Esau to go steal the firstborn blessing from his father. Okay? Maybe we'll talk about that next week because it belongs to the next Parsha. And I know this because we have a bar mitzvah this Saturday afternoon that he's talking about this in his speech. So maybe we'll talk about this topic next week for Torah L'Chaim, about Rebecca, how she was great, but there's a little bit of controversy towards the end of her life. Let's continue talking about the animals. Now, listen to this. Torah sources serve only to demonstrate that animals directed conduct which is compassionate in nature constitutes as good deeds, but do not serve to establish a system of responsibilities. Okay? It's interesting because the Torah gives a few examples, but it does not give us a specific system of responsibilities towards animals. It's not so direct like in many other cases where we'll have more direct mitzvot or commandments of what to do when other things are on the table, but not necessarily for animals. So we have to go here and there and learn it and to learn from the examples that the Torah provides. So, particularly in light of the strong halachic element present in Judaism, the absence of everyday regulations might well be regarded as indicative of the absence of serious ethical concerns for the welfare of members of the animal kingdom. Okay? But this is demonstrably not the case. For in Jewish teaching, there is no lack of laws designated to protect and promote animal welfare. The most obvious example of regulation having such an effect, and one which is clearly biblical in origin, is contained in the verse, "If you see the donkey which belongs to someone you hate, someone you hate you lying down helpless under its load, you are not to pass him by, but to go and help him free it." So you understand what's going on here. If you see the animal of your enemy suffering, you may think, well, too bad. The animal belongs to my enemy, so let it suffer. But the Torah says all the opposite. If you see the animal of your enemy suffering, you have to go and help the animal nevertheless. You see, the example is very interesting for us to create a general rule from there. So you can think, right, if you have to help the animal of your enemy, even more so, your own animals or other animals that you may have around. Because the worst case scenario is the animal of your enemy. And even those you have to help and you have to avoid their suffering. So it's a very interesting example that the Torah is bringing us in the book of Exodus. Let me continue reading here. The self-same concern is manifest in the prohibition against muzzling an ox while it thrashes, in order that the animal be free to eat of the produce while working. Similarly, Scripture provides that both domestic animals and wild beasts might be permitted to share its produce of the land which grows without cultivating during the sabbatical years. So it's interesting because during the sabbatical years, human beings are not allowed to eat any produce from the land, but animals can. So in some aspects, we take care of the animals with higher standards than we take care of humans, because a human being may struggle during the sabbatical year to find food, and nevertheless we cannot eat from, the sabbatical year we cannot harvest. So you have to let all the fruit there to rot. You can't even eat it, but the animals can. The animals can go and eat it during the sabbatical year. Now, let's continue with the same thing. This is part of the same text. So, Shabbat laws contained in both formulations of the Ten Commandments reflect a concern which goes beyond the mere elimination of pain and discomfort and serve to promote the welfare of animals in a positive manner by providing for the rest on the Shabbat day. Okay, so even for the laws of Shabbat, that we don't think about this. It says, but the seventh day is a Shabbat for Adonai your God. On it, you are not to do any kind of work. Not you, your son, your daughter, nor your male or your female slave. Listen to this. Nor your ox, your donkey, or any of your other livestock, and not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates to your property, so that your male and female servants can rest just as you do. So this is interesting because in different generations, and this is unfortunate about humanity and the history of humanity, when we know that not everybody had the same level. People used to believe that different human beings had different levels. So they were the free people were at one level, they were the slaves, they were at a different level. So you may be considered a human, but a slave was not. And we had already that experience when we were in Egypt. So the Torah is very, very specific here, just not leaving anything to the imagination, listing everything that in one time or another of human history, one group of another of this list may have not be considered equally human or equally allowed to rest on Shabbat. So sometimes some people may think that the slaves, they should work, but the Torah said no. The slaves are also people, they should rest. But some people say, well, the animals should work. No, even the animals for the Shabbat are at the same level of human people, and they also should rest. So the same way that you cannot work on Shabbat, the animals should not work on Shabbat. So you see, even though we don't have explicit information about, a code of conduct towards animal, you can see here how easy it is for the rabbis to figure out a system for us to know the behavior we should develop to treat animals fairly. So let me wrap up with this text. At the end it says, even more explicit is expressing concern for the welfare of animals in the verse, 6 days do your work, but on the seventh day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest. Beautiful thing that is teaching us how to treat animals. Okay, that's why we see how cruel it is when people mistreat animals and when they leave them on the street, right? And then thank God for shelters and no kill shelters that they get them and they provide for them until somebody else can adopt these animals. Shelley Chochinov, you said animal. Is that because we depend on them for food, clothing, and work? No, it's because they are, as Rabbi Sachs says, because they have feelings. Animals have feelings, so we take care of them. We provide for them because even though they cannot talk, they're not humans, but they have feelings. So we recognize that. So we should avoid their suffering. So the Rambam, the Maimonides, he also writes something about this. He will say in the Guide for the Perplexed, he said, it is also prohibited to kill an animal which is young on the same day, and we learn this from the Torah, in order that people should be restrained and prevented from killing the two together in such a manner that the young is slain in the sight of the mother. For the pain of the animals under such circumstances is very great. So we're talking about Maimonides here. This is the Middle Age. Maimonides is already recognizing the feelings of the animals. There is no difference in this case between the pain of man and the pain of other living beings, since the love and tenderness of the mother for her young ones is not produced by reasoning, but by imagination, and this faculty exists not only in man, but in most living beings. So in other words, Maimonides is understanding in his limited way, because the science was very limited in the Middle Ages, that the feelings that like a parent will feel for the child, it's something that is not rational, and that being rational is what makes us human. But the love that we feel for them, it's something that is not rational. So Maimonides will say, so that's why for him was no doubt that the animals were sentient as well, and they were having feelings as well. And it make it very clear that we have to be very careful the way we treat the animals. And I think in many ways humanity understood this. And we may disagree what some people consider to be humane towards animals or not, but at least there is an attempt to try to find a way to avoid animal suffering. And yeah. Okay, so then I will leave it there, because then I don't want to start a new topic when this is a perfect wrap up for today's class. So I would like to say to everyone, thank you so much again for tuning in. Thank you for your virtual presence here at Torah L'Chaim. I love when you guys come week after week, and I like your comments. So thank you very much for all the comments in the chat. And remember, if you missed any part of this class, it's going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. And yeah, and other than that, you can also replay the class as soon as I finish it. We have a playlist at the Shari Zedek YouTube channel, so you can go visit all our classes anyway. So remember to give the like to this class, and if you haven't subscribed to the Shari Zedek, please do so. Please subscribe to our channels so you will be notified every time we go live and every time we upload something to our platform so we can stay in contact even if we don't see each other in person. Okay, so thank you very much everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe and hope to see you soon. Bye everyone.